Casual Magic has been brought to you by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can get cool stuff. Use the code CASUAL for 5% off your order. We're also sponsored by Quiver Time, makers of the Quiver and Bolt deck cases and other fine card-holding accessories. Use the code CASUAL on their site for 10% off your purchase. And by Architect, a deck hosting website that doesn't sell anything, but they like me and I like them, so kindly use them for all your deck list needs. Now, on to the show. Hello and welcome to Casual Magic, the show where we talk about the fun side of Magic the Gathering. My name is Shivam and Casual Magic is brought to you by Architect, Cool Stuff Inc., and Quiver. Today I have a very highly requested conversation that I wasn't expecting, but I'm super happy to have. I've brought on for a second time my dear friend Hermit Druid for Shivam and Hermit's Gardening Hour, so we could sit and talk about plants and magic. And yeah, look, we've talked about magic. We talked about magic extensively last time. We talked about magic on 180 of these episodes. But today I want to talk about the fact that we're here in the middle of summertime, and Hermit and I are both green mages, at least in part. And we have been having some damn good garden times. And so, how's it going, my friend?
Oh, it is a lovely day, actually. We had a nice thunderstorm in the morning, so we went out and walked around in the rain, got things done, and now it's sunshine, so we're all just hiding, you know. Oh, there's a bee that's coming by to visit me.
Yeah, man. You have the best backdrop I've seen of any of the people on my show, hanging out in your actual garden.
Yeah, I know. Everybody's
Man,
like, yeah, I know. The Hermit Druid thing is it's not a thing. It's like this is who he is.
It's a good handle, but it's also a fitting handle.
Yeah. No, it's like this is even my little church is outside. But yeah, no, it's my one of my favorite times of the year, except for in autumn, because that's when it's harvest season, and that's where all the fun stuff comes in.
Yeah, I mean, for those at home on the audio, can you tell people what you're sitting in front of?
What am I sitting in front of?
Mm.
Well, what's behind me?
Yeah, what's behind you, literally?
So actually, this is one thing that I need to talk about. This is my Italian garden. The one in front of me is my Mexican garden. The one to the left of me here is my native Anishinaabe garden. So the Native Americans around the area that I'm from. And then I have a cucumber garden over here, which is where I'm growing like a lot of my Chinese greens and Asian greens, along with my cucumbers. So every single one of these, they're set up to tell the history of agriculture and colonization.
I was gonna say, I'm like, there aren't a lot of tomatoes inherently in Italy, even though it's now just so fundamental part of their society.
So that's exactly what this entire garden is set up to form. So for the 10,000 years ago, so this is over here. This is Mexico. This is Mexico right here. Cool. And I have 20 vines of heirloom tomatoes in here.
Oh, damn.
Along with some other bits and pieces.
How do you keep the white flies off?
So I practice in permaculture. I practice native gardening techniques. I practice a very hands-off technique. I practice restorative ecoculture in my front yard. I have never had a single problem. I had an aphid infestation, and my borage absolutely tanked it like it was supposed to. I plant right here next to me are nasturtiums, which kick out a flower and leaf that is extremely edible to not only us, but to because this tastes like arugula.
Yeah.
So it's edible to us, but it's also extremely edible to other things. So they just go and eat that. It's like training a dog. You could fight it all day to try and fight its natural its natural disposition. They're like, I want to chew on something. And you could sit there all day and be like, don't chew. But
so the goal is to have them eat the nasturtium, though, right?
Correct. And that's the same with the borage. My borage, not only does it taste like cucumber on the blossoms, but it repollinates every 5 minutes. So things just go ham for that. And I've got basil and all these other things kicking around.
Yeah. I have cilantro in my garden, cilantro and dill that serves as the same function. I also have a nasturtium, but I planted this ugly yellow nasturtium this year, and I'm trying to get a better color because I just don't like the way it looks.
I've
Um,
got jewels and climbings because one is a darker red color. Hold up.
yeah, I can see it right there.
Yeah, right over here in the guts. So this is a darker color,
Mm-hmm.
and the flower is slightly darker. So
Yeah, mine is kind of like a butter yellow color with some orange streaks in it. But the point though is more that having nasturtium, dill, and cilantro in your garden next to like your tomatoes or the things you care about that normally get attacked is great because then you'll get like all of the things like swallowtails and ladybugs and all those friends will come and hang out at those flowers and then eat all the aphids and friends.
it's the ladybugs. I have a TikTok that I made that it's entirely for myself. But you know the like I don't know if you know the like and those who tasted the bite of his sword named him the Doomslayer, and I'm just like focusing in on a ladybug, and it's like going through my garden. It's like and those who tasted the bite of his sword named
Yes.
him. Zoom in on the ladybug, the Doomslayer, and like
Doomslayer.
if you know anything about what ladybugs do
Ladybugs
to
are the most
smaller,
important thing
yeah,
in the world, man.
they're like, oh, I'm ladybug, and they're just like it's like you know that the Thomas meme. It's like ladybugs from our views, ladybugs from aphids views, and it's just like mass murder.
Yeah,
Uh,
seriously.
yeah. So so a lot of places right now, and it's also cheaper and whatnot. But yeah, full like yeah. So like it was basically just planting things to tank other things, and like even with my three sisters garden, I upped it to four sisters by adding sunflowers,
Mm.
which is
Oh
also
god,
a
my sunflowers are blooming right now. They're so
oh.
cool.
So I what kind of sunflowers do you grow?
I got 6 varieties, so
Oh
I just
yeah.
planted 6 different ones and they're just all over the place and they're just flowering. I just wanted to
Oh
see what the different ones look like so next
yeah,
year I can
right. They're
decide.
so great. Like the yellow ones are beautiful. I love
But
them.
I
Don't
have
get
this
me
one
wrong, but
that's this deep burnt russet red
yeah.
color
What
with like orange.
velvet queens or autumn
Yeah,
beauty?
oh my god, it's so hot. It's so
Yeah.
good looking.
So this is hold on.
Oh, I cut off your story. Oh yeah, that's exactly the one. That's the one.
Yeah. Uh, and then I also have a Mexican torch, smaller sunflowers,
I
and
have
then
never
I
seen one of
have
those.
so like you see all these bees that are just like hopping around doing
Yeah,
their things. Like
yeah, I've got this.
these are my buddies. There's like so many bees on every single one of these. The day pollinators are all out.
Oh yeah,
The
love it.
morning pollinators come out and have my zucchini flowers. Sorry,
Mhm.
my squash flowers.
Same
And then
thing.
the day pollinators come out. Yeah, same thing. And that's the whole story. Um, so yeah, that was actually fun. So my wife spent a lot of time learning about this stuff this year the hard way and the fun way. But one day she came to me and she realized that she couldn't tell the pumpkin sprouts from the cucumber sprouts from the zucchini sprouts, and she's like, "Something's going on here." And I'm like, "Yeah, she's thinking." Um, yeah, so like that's the 10,000 years of evolution that I was talking about, or of agriculture. Like, obviously, I'm a fan of American crops. I'm I'm American. Like, I'm
Right.
Canadian, but like I mean, I'm America as in the crop. And when I'm talking about America, I'm going to be
North
talking
American.
about, yeah, I'm going to be talking about the Americas. Like,
Mm.
I don't want to like we're going to be talking about the Americas in a bit, because I'm talking about like
Now, to be fair though, cucumber is more a melon than like a squash, and
yeah. Well,
squashes
it's
and
all the
melons are not
cucumber.
quite the same.
Yeah, it's all the cucumberid family. Like at the end of the day,
Yeah,
like it's like all
right.
like uh so the story that my gardens are meant to talk about in the 10,000 years is how we started with beans, corn, squash, and cacao and chilies, are all originally developed in Mesoamerica in Mexico. Um,
Hmm.
and over 10,000 years, we turned, or they turned, we as a human species turned these like grains of grass into big, into ears of corn that became the staple of like the Mesoamerican diet, along with beans, which are a protein source, and we learned to cultivate different types of it, and that was what the Mesoamerican diet was based on for a long time, until around 1500s, uh, when the Fire Nation
What could
attacked.
have happened then?
Yeah, the Fire Nation attacked. So
Hmm.
that's when the Europe comes over here. So my Italian garden, that comes over. So through Europe, and Spain and Iberia, Hispania, Iberia, what it's like at the time, all goes to the Americas, do that, that history lesson, and they bring back tomatoes and beans and other things. So they start bringing these crops over. And the thing about crops is it's really hard to, or it's more difficult to acclimatize them this way when you move across the globe, because that's when we start having temperature
Mm-hmm.
fluxes. But if you take something in Mesoamerica and basically move it right along the line and
Horizontally across.
transplant it in southern Italy, those tomatoes do not give a sorry, those tomatoes just don't care. So like you stand back and you look at the map and you go like, well, no wonder they did amazing there. And like, no wonder. That's also the style of cooking that I have, which I think I alluded to in a previous episode. But like that lateral way of thinking, like we all have this, like this is how this makes you think. It's like, well, this came over here and there and there, and we all have the same kind of stuff. Like there's a reason why my cooking in Ontario is very similar to Northern Italy. Go and look it up. Like there's a reason why northern Japanese chestnut trees, oddly enough, kind of grow better in southern Ontario. Like, because there's a reason why I generally say like my cooking style is anywhere where apples do well. So like there's an entire band across the earth, all the way from the western seaboard and like what is that? Seattle and whatnot on the west, all the way across, of like the northern United States into southern Ontario, right across. And then you keep following that across the ocean. And then we're talking England, we're talking France, we're talking a lot of like Central Europe. And now we're talking where apples came from in the steppes.
In like Azerbaijan and
Exactly. So that's where they all came from.
That.
It's like the Caucasus. And then follow that all the way across, and then you're getting into like these beautiful Chinese apples and these beautiful Chinese peaches. And then you keep following that across, and all of a sudden you're in northern Japan. And guess who loves apples?
Everybody.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody along, like that's where I say, like I rock with anybody from that band. From that band, like we rock hard together because we all eat the same thing. We're all like, yes, we like cabbage, we like apples, we like mustard, we like these things. It's like you could have like the Irish on one side of Europe and the Koreans on the other side of Asia being like, hi, yes, cabbage, dope. Also imperialism. Either way. Sorry.
Cabbage.
Yeah. Well, it's the brassica family. That's another family that is being, because I've got different types of brassicas in here. I've got purple Brussels sprouts that are over there that are growing. I have broccolini right here. That
I
just
harvested
clipped the
my
other day.
cauliflower and broccoli, and right now I'm getting the second sprouting of broccolini, which is basically broccolini is just the side sprouts that come off of a broccoli plant. Once you cut the main head off. But I love broccolini. It's so much fun, especially with like cannellini beans and sun-dried tomatoes or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's all, wow, where does all that come from? Where the cannellini bean? Yeah, like tomatoes. Either way. So that is how that Italian. Got. Yeah. Either way, where did it all come from? Either way. So that's what happens this way. And then we wonder, well, how did chilies that all originated in Mexico? Well, that means by logic, by rationality, by like literally, you can't argue with this. Chilies didn't exist in the old world until the 1500s. Ergo, China just didn't have chilies, so Chinese food wasn't spicy. So how did
Indian food
or
Thai food?
Thai food, none of that shit. Gui Jiao.
Although
it's all I'm saying is the Europeans, which had all brought it over from Mexico, started trading with Asia, and that's how a lot of this culture got introduced to Asia, which is hilarious because you have Portuguese Chinese culture, like Macau. The whole area of Macau is Portuguese. It's Portu Chinese, and like so you'll have Chinese
Goa
people
in India.
Yeah. You have Chinese people starting their day with, well, not every day, but like starting their day with custard tarts, Portuguese custard tarts. And I'm like, well, that's just how the world works. Like the world is big and old and messy, and it's amazing when you just step back and look at it. And like the food that we eat tells an entire history through agriculture of like how things got spread around the world. And when you realize that like all these things that we take are staples, like this is the way things have been forever, is the way things have always been. And I'm like, China didn't have chilies until the 1600s. Your eating traditions are barely 600-700 years old. like anywhere. And even the stuff that we eat now, like the way that we eat in a restaurant was only started by Auguste Escoffier. Like this whole
In the
like
1900s.
yeah, exactly. So like tradition, like the way the Italians have like sold their food, you'd think that tomatoes had always come from there, but it's like no, they're like it's.
Yeah,
I'm sorry,
like
but like
you can
facts
tell
exist.
because like in Italian food, for instance, you can tell because there's ragu recipes that predate Columbus that are things like, just meat, just spices, no tomatoes. And if they postdate Columbus, they will have tomatoes in them. Or you can see like when was this recipe created? Do you have the Renaissance spices like clove and cinnamon and stuff that would have only gotten from there from trade? Or do you predate Renaissance spices? That way you can look and you can almost like carbon date a recipe and see when this family decided this is codified as a thing. The reason, one of the things I wanted to bring up is like literally yesterday, as of recording, there was an article that was put out that a bunch of archaeologists in Southeast Asia basically discovered the oldest like remains of processing spices in a dish that basically effectively would look like curry. Like they found this old grindstone, this old kind of mortar and pestle in Vietnam, and in it they had like the remnants of cloves and coriander and ginger and turmeric and galangal and all this stuff. And I'm like, and people are like, wow, they discovered curry. I'm like, no, guys, curry is a British thing. Turns out Southeast Asia has just been cooking with a blend of dried spices for like thousands of years. And that's
Yeah,
just kind of
well,
what we eat.
there's one things that human beings have always done is we've really focused on what the hell we eat.
Oh,
Like we
yeah.
like eating, like it's just what we do. We've always loved to eat, like through the dawn of time. It's like there's the two oldest professions in the goddamn world, and it's to take care of our two
Hmm.
basic needs. All right, but
There's a
like
famous quote from Lydia, the chef Lydia Bastianish, which is like, look, like she was talking about fancy foods, and she was like, what else do you put in someone's body?
body exactly. I
Right?
had yeah, and everybody wonders why I am the way I am, and I'm like, because I'm a cook, man. Like, why are chefs always the same? I'm like,
I don't know. The thing that makes me wild is that, like, you sit there and you think about the fact that Columbus and friends brought back a handful of tubers for potatoes, a handful of chilies that became like all of the chilies and potatoes and stuff for the rest of
well,
the world.
that's where
But in
yeah.
Peru, they've got 3,000 friggin' varieties or whatever. Like, and you're like, what the?
And
These are
also, I love the way
potatoes
that
we just never got.
fashion alone will just change things. Because like carrots have always been multiple colors.
Yeah.
Until all of a sudden the Dutch decided, you know what, we're going to make them all orange to pay honor to our monarchy.
Yeah.
And that,
They
and
weren't
that,
even orange. They were like yellow and purple and
exactly.
things.
We will make them orange. It's like, so the amount of times that people walk around like, oh, this is the way that nature intended. I'm like,
Well, that's why
bruh.
every time I look at that, I'm like, yo, somebody took a brassica plant and bred the hell out of it to make a cauliflower different from a broccoli, different
Because
from
it's
a,
each, yeah, from kale. It's
yeah,
like,
from
I'm going to take
kale.
this brassica which is mustard. So
Yeah,
it's like the mustard plant. Well, I'm going to focus it to grow more seed. And I'm like, I've got a mustard seed plant. India was just like,
let's go.
let's go, taking that one. Like, oh man, like all the kinds of mustard seed. And I'm also like, I have mad respect because I'm from Canada and we're like the number one exporter of mustard seed in the world. But like, oh, the
Mustard
like
seed oil is great, by the way.
mustard seed oil is great. Raita is so good. Just
Oh,
like,
I love it.
I can't wait to like I got my whole cucumber garden. I have cucamelons going.
Oh my god, they're so cute.
Um, oh, because like I like my entire life, 22 years, I spent focused on just the art of preparation of food. Now I'm just focusing on the back end of it because like first off, it's an amazing way to teach people, and
It's fun.
I
It's
love teaching.
fun.
I have people walking past here that they're like kids, like just like bouncing their basketball, and they're like, "What the is going on here?" And then they up because like I can hear them. I'm like, "Hey,
Language.
hey, kids!" And next thing you know, they've got in here and they've got this shirtless, like tattooed cracker because like going on about like the history of colonization and whatnot and agriculture to start screaming at, and they're like, "I have learned more in the last."
10 minutes.
Yeah, then 2 hours, and I have learned. Like I just learned about ecoculture, history, like biodiversity, colonization, like what happened, like like horticulture. Like I like the fun fact is these beds are even set up with pipes underneath it in an aggregate layer, and I fill it through a pipe, which is hitting underneath this because I have aesthetics. So I actually water my garden beds from the bottom. so that it's called a sub irrigation system or a SIP system, so that it promotes the roots to grow down and it pulls water
Yep.
up, which holds water longer. It also has a spill out pipe so it doesn't go anaerobic, but whatnot. But like, so then I start talking about like, and then they're like, oh, that's interesting. And I'm like, you know what that's a lesson into? We're going to start talking about the layers of the earth. And it's just like, and people are like, what the hell? I had a teacher come by. Apparently, I found out they were a teacher afterwards, and they're like, do you teach? I'm like, no, ma'am, because I curse. And I will
curse you with knowledge and language.
I will radicalize your children. I will see it. That's how it, like, a couple years ago it started, because like I posted about some beans that I was growing and some corn, and people were like, what the hell is that? Or like, that's some kind of hipster mutant. And I'm like, no, man, that's the way things were. Like, went on full, like, this is what they stole from you. I have obviously in my sister's garden. If nobody knows what the sisters are, that's
like, dude, actually finish a story. We've gone through like the beginning of it 30 times. Like, finish.
Well,
Tell us what the three sisters are.
I finished this one. This three. That's why I say there's like 100 lessons I can teach out of this thing.
Oh, I know, dude. Believe.
Yeah. That's why I like. So this. That's. I get this camera out of the way. Get out of the way here. God. The one thing Hermit will make is funny noises. So the three sisters are one. So we talked about like all the horrible things that happened when Europe came here, but this was the nice exchange as ingredients moved north from Mexico to where I'm from in Canada. So the three sisters are beans, corn, and squash, and together they became like a symbolism of Native American agriculture, because
and interconnectivity.
Exactly, and permaculture, and how things can work together. So the three sisters together are beans, corn, and squash. Sister corn, grows tall and straight and strong with a thick stalk, and she needs to be together. Sister bean will climbs the stalk and gives it nice and shade and cover and whatnot. And then Sister Squash sprawls across the bottom with these big leaves that provide shade and mulching and whatnot. So they stop the soil from drying out to like that kills Sister Corn. And the three of them together, also Sister Bean, it's not necessarily
nitrogen.
Fixes nitrogen, which the current debate is like, is the bean the nitrogen fixer, or is it the rhizome that lives at the bean's thing? Either way, it provides a nitrogen level to the soil, which provides a level of fertilization that the entire process needs. And also together, they form a complete protein, complete amino protein, which allowed, come on, up that way. One was like, at the face, like, hey, can you just move that way? They form a complete amino protein that allowed a lot of the Native American people to survive through the winter, when, in general, and also just allowed people to eat. Bus. Yeah, I live right in the middle of this. Is my my oasis. Like on the other side of that is the city.
Mm-hmm.
So I just kind of sit in here because I love the city, but I also would rather be in the woods. Oh, yeah. Can you hear the Desi beats in the background? The mailman's coming through, so we're gonna end up with some like top 40 Bhangra beats like blasted at like full volume, and I'm gonna try not to dance. Let's pull it. Oh, so beans, corn, squash, and whatnot. Mailbox is right there. This one has the fourth sister added in, which is sunflower, which provides a lot of the same things that Sister corn does. However, it is in there as a defender, as a protector, or the sacrificial crop. It is in there as a pollinator, but it is also in there to produce seed to keep the birds away from the corn.
Yeah.
So it's an active sacrificial crops. But also it brings, like, I have, you saw it in the last thing, there's like 5 bees on each one of these sunflowers, and that's why I have full clusters of tomatoes growing, because the bees stay busy in my yard. Oh, I also have tomatillos in this garden, and they are growing so well.
Tomatillos are wild. Like, they're real. Goodness gracious me. They're very tasty, but they're also like, you got to know what you're doing with them. But they add a really nice sourness to your dishes, and they add a really nice kind of tang.
Oh, I'll be making salsa. Well, I'll be making These are not normal looking. They're purple tomatillos. Like, why would I buy the green? Why would I plant the green ones when I can just buy the green ones? So, like, get the
Fair.
purple ones. Like that. My entire thing. It's like I'm not like my Italian garden is set up just for as a teaching lesson. But all the tomatoes that I'm growing in here are weird heirloom ones. Some I've never even heard of. Like, I originally started with less tomatoes, but like I'd go to the thing and I'm like, I've never heard of this before, and I walk out with one. Oops.
Yeah, like the thing is like, and also I see this a lot in South Indian dishes. They'll like when they're making their version of dal and stuff, they will use tomatillos as a souring agent if they don't have tamarind handy because it's got a similar flavor profile and it
So
acts as a really interesting tang.
the whole history of immigration and whatnot. Now, like, again, I might have this opinion because like I'm from Toronto, and 52% of the population of the city that I'm from are not from this country. We are the most multicultural city in the world. So a lot of my cooking style and the way I think was definitely influenced by immigration and immigrants. Like, I can remember myself like having like, this is the thing about transferring ingredients about from what you
Mm,
have to something else. Like, so in the old world, like, they demand, like, the European fascist mindset is like, this is the recipe thou must follow. We have standardized it, we have perfected it, where it's like people that are used to a more transient like style, they're like, well, I'm over here now, what is something that I can. So whereas like the European side, we're going to clear this area, we're going to take what's here and we're going to plant it there and we're going to force it to work, whereas like a lot of the other people that are like don't have that mindset or like that kind of money or military power have often been like, well, what am I going to use here? So this is where I am now. What do I have that is close, and what can I get?
mm.
And this has also taught me, like, so to bring this all back into a story, I am 25 years, 24, 20, 24, 25 years, 24 years old. I'm working as a, maybe a little older. I'm working at this place, and I get invited to someone's house for Thanksgiving dinner.
Mm.
Their wife is Korean. They're Canadian. They were Native American, so like real Canadian, but like Canadian North American upbringing.
Sure.
And we sat down and we had our holiday meal, the turkey, the stuffing, and whatnot. And then all of a sudden, the kimchi started coming out, and then whatnot. And I was like, okay, first off, at this point in time, like, I'm 37, so this is a while ago. Uh, like, I was like, all right, at the time, I had assumed kimchi only meant the cabbage varietal, not like the way that we mean the word pickle, where it could mean anything. But then things started coming out, like, so it came out, it was like dandelion green kimchi, and they're like, well, no, I like, this isn't a thing in Korea, but my oma like goes and picks dandelion greens for free in the park because like she comes from a poor background where you don't waste food. So like there's a lot of things that she's going around the park and you're like, you're letting your dog piss on these? Like, what the hell's the matter with you? Like, this is food. Which again, like, also my style of gardening is also influenced a lot by the like people that have come here like traditionally from like poor backgrounds, being not necessarily just Asian but also European. A lot of the neighborhood that I live in is Portuguese. So their backyards are basically entirely like almost a war garden. Like,
Hmm.
they're like vines growing on their thing through the back. Like, their front yard may not look good, but their entire backyard is usually some kind of structure where they're growing food. Even if
That's
it's just
my
something.
house. Literally, my front yard looks like a desolate, like, post-apocalyptic nightmare. My backyard is this tropical, like, paradise of fruits and vegetables. Um, but yeah, you're exactly right because there's an immigrant mindset. Like I've told before, my grandma, like my uncle owned a motel in in North Carolina for a long time on like the side of the highway. A lot of Indian people do that, and he was in an area where a lot of Indian motel owners lived. So they formed a kind of almost a pseudo village of like grandmas would be walking back and forth barefoot and like talk to each other in Gujarati and stuff, and they didn't care. And my grandma turned like when she moved in with them, she turned the common area of their motel, fenced it off, and then planted all of these illegal seeds that she'd smuggled in her sari from India to just bring like a whole bunch of like fruits and vegetables that you cannot get in the Carolinas, so that like the folks in the neighborhood could have a home cooking of the old style, like random beans that don't grow here or bitter melons or things like that. It's just like
The amount of times that I have been able to, like, this is my cooking style where I aim to like be specifically cool with immigrant grandparents. Um, uh, I hit that where they're just like, nah, like, how do you know? How did you do this? They're like, this is like, yeah, it's like, oh no, because I grew this from scratch. I did this, and they're like that, and they're like this, and they're like, I haven't had that since like my grandparents.
Yeah,
And
serious.
like my neighbor next door, they're from sub-Saharan Africa, and they're coming in my garden. They're just like, okay, like what's going on? Like, oh, I've got. And then I showed like they're there. I'm like, start showing them my okra plants, and I'm like, well, this is where I'm going to start making like these dishes from. And they're like, oh, right. And then like they come by the other day and they're like, oh, what are you cooking? And I show them, and they're like, well, why does it look like this? Because I'm plucking out squash blossoms and garnishing with nasturtiums and stuff. And people are like, okay, like we understood that you garden. Where did the risk come? They're like, oh, this is just my hobby. What I actually am is a chef. And they're just like, yes!
They're like, so can we just move in? Is that the
Yeah,
how does this work?
you know you've won when you have someone from Islam looking, or from the Islamic background, like looking at your pork dish, going, all right, that looks pretty. All right,
Yeah.
Not gonna eat it, but all right.
It's like I'm not gonna eat it, but I appreciate what's gone into it.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, like damn, that looks. That
Yeah, I mean,
looks
I
nice.
can look at like meat dishes all the time and be like, "Yo, that's not food to me." However, I know how much went into that, and that looks sick. So good luck with that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, like that's the thing about like I also eat like the rest of the like I eat like the rest of the world does.
We're
Where
gonna have to
like
put a disclaimer on this episode, man.
I'm so sorry. I'm trying to repeat myself so that like
It
they
doesn't
can
make
cut
a
it out.
difference. You were just going and just
Sorry, I
keep
didn't
going.
even
Don't
know.
worry about it. Don't worry about it. EK's gonna have fun.
Sorry, EK. Either way, what was I?
You were
Damn.
talking about pork dishes. Your garden.
Either way, like we eat like the rest of the world does. Not only because I'm poor, but also like we predominantly eat a lot more vegetables than we do our meat. Like
Yeah.
But like our dinner the other day was just basically like 2 pounds of different types of squash that were available at this time. Like we were grabbing the zucchini, we were grabbing the patty. I've got zucchini growing in my garden here, so like my wife wanted like some homegrown grilled zucchini, and like my again I talk about my cooking style, but like I really like to plan my entire dishes in the seed and then pull them out and then directly go. Like my ideal restaurant is going to have 10 customers at most, twice a week. And I will literally be going, like, sending them pictures in the morning of going, this is your tomato, pluck it. Like, I'm not interested in running around kitchens anymore. I've done that for too long. What I'm interested in doing is literally just my craft, from base all the way up. But like when you have a fundamental, I think after we had this full conversation, that like when you have a full fundamental understanding of the medium in which you apply your arts, you decide you want to take a more aggressive hold of it. So this year I'm entirely cooking things when I'm practicing my art, when I'm practicing my dishes. We are using from seed, from ground, and only fire. No mechanical introductions at all. Only what I can build and or create with my own two hands. I also have like a bad problem accepting compliments, and like if I can write it off, I will. But I also have an ego. These are two conflicting natures within myself that cause the turmoil that is myself.
Mm-hmm.
So like I also had like the deep Christian Catholic guilt of like not wanting to be too egotistical. So when I earn something, I'm putting my foot, like I never feel guilty about stating my achievements ever, because nobody can make me feel guilty about it. Like, sorry, like welcome to my God complex. But like when I put this down and someone says this is the best thing I've ever eaten, I said I ate it. I made it. Like I made it. And it, like when someone says, "Oh, this is the dish that I made," I'm like, "Oh, did you go to the grocery store? Nice. Oh, did someone else get it? Oh, you should hear me talk to some bartenders, because bartenders used to get real uppity back in the day." I'm like, at the most complicated thing, the most you make is salad dressing. Like, like at it, we're talking about 3-part ratios, sweet sour through across a base, and you make it into a drink.
Yeah, you're just shaking the hell
Yeah,
out of it.
where you shake, blend, or whatnot. I started taking bartender seriously when they started walking around with cookbooks, and for some reason they didn't.
So let me tell you a story first off. My favorite bartender, there's a 3 Michelin star restaurant called Quince here in San Francisco. And one of the things they do, they obviously got their own farm, et cetera, blah, blah, whatever. However, the thing that impressed me was that their mixologist goes and took a chunk of the farm that they grow their produce on and started growing his own botanicals and his own weirdo things and made an entire like multi-drink course of non-alcoholic beverages based on like the various herbs and tinctures and stuff that they grew at the farm. And I was like, this is one of the and they're like they
That's
pair
that's
it up with the fools.
that's what I want to do.
It's
Like,
insane. It's so cool. I was like,
let
first
me
off,
do
the
that.
fact that
Let
it
me
was a
look after.
non-alcoholic flight, but I was like,
Yeah,
holy crap.
yeah, yeah. Let me
Yeah.
look after your kitchen garden. Like, that's what I want to do. Like, for some reason, there used to be a job back in the day where you could be a garden hermit, and I'm like, anybody want to bring that back?
Right. Um, yeah. So right now in my garden, I've got Sandra. I've got let's see, um, 3 sun gold tomatoes that are just like strays that I found growing in my yard from last year's crop. That I was
Oh,
like,
I love that
great. I
shit.
don't have to buy them. Plant them. They're already strong. I know they're strong. So I'm just gonna plant them. And I've been getting a ton of sun golds, which are like cherries. They're so delicious.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I've got San
There's an
Marzanos.
herb up there that randomly grew, but I'm not going to focus too hard on it. But that was a random grow.
I love dude. The best stuff I've ever gotten has been just like a seed just left alone and suddenly just turned into something. Um,
Yeah,
I harvested a whole bunch of potatoes yesterday, and all my onions are now drying on the lawn. Um, I have like 2 more tomatoes. One's like a random heirloom we saw that looked cool, and one is a San Marzano for my sauces. I've been picking Haricot beans like for the past 2 weeks, and now I was going to pick your brain to figure out what I can do with these things. 'Cause I've got way more than I know what to do with.
so
My
when we're talking
scarlet
about the
runners are
haricot
doing it.
bears,
Yeah,
so these are my. You told me to bring those up. Those are the trofinos.
I love it. I should grow that next year. The thing is that my Haricot I've been growing for like 4 seasons now, and I've just been using the seeds from last year. And the fact that it just like it just grows and it's great. And I'm like, you know what? Screw it. This is the way the old people did it. I'm just gonna keep a packet of seeds around from that what I grew. And then my scarlet runners are starting to take off, and now I'm gonna plant a second crop. I threw in a squash to get ready for fall, and I'm gonna throw in a melon just because I've got space.
That's hold on, let me slow you down. You see the top of my house, the roof of my house, or my next patio up there? I'm growing a bean fence with the scarlet runners and orca beans.
mm.
Because if there is a heritage breed to be continued, you can bet my ass is going to try and maintain that heritage breed.
Oh, I love, dude. It drives me batty that these things are all just called the common bean. I'm like, yes, I get it. They're all the common bean, but I love weirdo varieties of beans that are just like
Ever seen the blue
this
jay
was
bean?
grown by some.
Ever seen the blue jay bean?
No,
Look it up. It's literally it's blue.
yeah,
But
but I
yeah,
love these things. That are like
exactly.
some random like Anasazi farmer or some like Hopi guy has just been keeping this thing around for like the past 4,000 years, and it's like, yes, let's eat that. I want
So
that.
I have Hopi pumpkins in here, and I am growing Hopi tobacco and white sage here. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
My religion is basically American.
Big fan.
Yeah.
Oh man, I don't know. I love growing like I love weirdo beans. Beans are
Yeah,
so
why not?
good.
Like
It
we're
tastes
the
good.
green mages in the group. I was like my roommate downstairs did not understand why I had to grow mouse melons. He's like, they're cucumbers. He's like, yes, but
Yes,
they're this big.
but
They're this big and they're adorable. And then I'm like, okay, well, now that we can sit here and talk about it, now pop that in your mouth and bite. And you see the way that blam, and you like, that is a useful tactic for me as a chef, because not only are they visually appealing, but being able to deliver that like pow pop kind of like explosion on something. So now I can contradict different ways I can make a cucumber salad and apply that pop to something in a different way. Or like, hell, even if I just want to make nice garnishes, like say for the top of a salmon like tartare or something, and then topping it with like a light little cucumber and basil salad, because I don't know, I have cucumbers, basil, nasturtiums. All of a sudden, I make a little salad out of this, and it looks. And then there's also that slight acid. Like each one of these cucumbers have like a slight, like they don't like all taste the same. Like this one has a slightly more gherkiny, like acidic flavor, and it's very, very lovely. But like again, the visual aesthetic meets pop.
okay, I need to run something by you.
Yeah,
The
right.
other day I was at a Thai restaurant and I was eating curry, and they did something I'd never seen before, which is inside the curry they had pickled cherry tomatoes
Mm.
that were like you would bite into them and there'd be this explosion of tart sourness and like pickle juice almost. My son was like, "It's like eating a bubble of pickle juice." And I'm like, "That's the greatest description I've ever had." And now I need to know how to make those.
You just roast them and drop them in vinegar. I used to do the same thing with grapes. Like it depends
Pickled
on how.
grapes?
Yeah, pickled grapes. That's Spanish.
That
You can
sounds
pickle grapes.
wild.
Oh yeah, super good. You roast them and pickle them, and it's phenomenal in salads or with meat dishes. But not that you would care. But like, it's a great
Sure, why
little.
not?
Like when you're cooking by proper like theory, or when you're working with theory, you work with your base five flavor elements at like all times. Sometimes you omit for cases, like it's like the bell curve. It's like, I don't know what that is. You always use it. Well, sometimes like maybe I want to create a little bitter notes, or maybe I want to focus on that. But like, you got your there's hold on, I don't know what that is. You see that beautiful red thing? Anyways, um, either way, when you're trying to work your bitters and your base flavor profiles in, and I forgot where I was going around with that. Sorry, I got distracted by a big red bee.
We were talking about pickles and
Oh right, yeah,
formulas.
sour. Yeah, sorry, the fat formula. So like when you want like pickled grapes, apply both sweet and sour. So you have one ingredient that knocks out two of your base things that you need. So you're allowed to. That's how things were like. You add a lot of things and then you start pulling back. So now you only start working with base elements. So say I only want to put. People like will look at a plate. There's only two things on the plate. I'm like, or three things on the plate. I'm like, yeah, but each one of those things is like, bam, like is targeted to be there. And that's when you're like, okay, so like, again, just different applications of stuff. But like, no, in at any point in time, if we can pickle something or make something out of something to preserve food, because for thousands of years, like a lot longer than we have had easy access to food, has been like, well, I'm not going to waste this thing of grapes because like I might need it in the middle of January or February.
And there's got to be something more to do than just drying grapes, right? Like drying
Oh
grapes
yeah.
is fine, but
Like, if you ever wonder, like, it's one of the things about like doing the research. It's like, start looking up like, where do grapes grow? Where are wine countries? What do they cook with their food? Grape recipes, like, but like look into Spanish food. Like I learned a lot about like stuff by like working at Iberian restaurants or eating at Iberian restaurants, and then I learned a lot of things about like going and working in, again, 22 years. Every 7-8 months, you like 6 to 8 months, you change job, because like that's the transient nature of the industry. And like I don't really talk about it because like I not really, but like the last restaurant I ran was a Vietnamese restaurant, which I like did for like 4 years, which is the longest restaurant that I've ever worked at. But then like people are like, oh, I got this. It's like, why does Hermit just randomly know a bunch of like stuff about Vietnamese food? I'm
about
like,
like pho.
yeah. I'm like, well, I ran a pho restaurant for a while, and I'm like, oh, what do you know? And it's like, well, my boss was Vietnamese, and I'm a chef. So what I had to do was like, he's like, I want to run a restaurant. And he's like, I don't know how to do that. So I had to translate all of his recipes and like learn. And he's like, oh, this is what I want to do. I had to, like, my mom made it this way or something. And he's like, I'm like, all right, so I guess I got to go I spend so many hours just poring over YouTube, seeing people like fry things on street corners, and going to
Right.
Google Translate and like, typing in questions and like horrible Google
What
Translate
is in
Vietnamese.
Bun Bo Yu? Or
Yeah. Or it's just like, or no, not even case. Well, even now, because like I deeply love a lot of, I guess right now one of my obsessions is just like pan Chinese food, or like pan China, all of it. Because it's like, until I start focusing in, I'm just trying to absorb different, like, I'm exposed a lot to Canton because of like the population that came here. But I'm like, Google Translate's free. So I'm watching videos that are just all in Chinese, and I'm like looking at the ingredients. I'm like, okay, he's adding that, he's adding that, he's adding that, he's adding that. Okay, cool. And then I'm like, well, there's like some kind of brown sauce I don't know. I just like, go translate sauce at 016. Post in comments. Someone just comes like Dalbin Jiang, and I'm like, reply, thank
I
you.
love Dobanjang.
Yeah. Or like that's how I learned what that was. I was like, okay, cool, thanks. And I'm like, or just confirming things like, is this, and this? And they're like, yes. Because like they don't speak English. And I'm like, I want the information so I can use Google Translate. Like, that's free. Like, it's even on Twitter, like with the Magic the Gathering stuff. Like, I regularly try to like talk to other people in different languages. And I'm like, like, especially
Exactly.
like I love the Brazilian Magic community. They thrive despite everything. And like, I mean, it's one of those like, like, I bow to you, my friend. Like, I will, like, if I'm in the middle of a conversation I am not having, you guys start speaking English to the only to the only gringo in the room. So like, if you want to speak to me in English, cool, but like Google Translate's free, so like you can just speak to me in Portuguese, I can speak to you in English,
And we can figure it out.
and we can just enjoy life. Because like I'm from Toronto, this is not new to me.
Right, seriously. It's like
yeah,
learning how to navigate linguistic spaces is just a thing that just a useful tool.
yeah. I'm a
It's like,
wisdom
especially
character, not an intelligence. I don't know how to speak the language, but like we can grunt a bit and figure it out.
point and gesture and be like, they'll figure it out. But like it's funny because like you were talking earlier about like, you know, the cross-pollination of food and stuff, and I just think about what is the most famous food in Vietnam that's been exported besides pho? It's banh mi, right? And what is banh mi? Banh mi is French bread and pate with a bunch of like pickles from Southeast Asia turned into a sandwich. The greatest thing in the world.
It's like colonization is terrible. The food, however.
You know what? It's like that's why I always give a side eye to people who are like, "Oh man, Korean kimchi tacos are so like such a travesty." I'm like, "Shut up and eat it. You will love it and just eat it. It's fine.
Yeah,
Everything
like,
is fine.
and then you
it's
go and
just
look
food."
you go and look at like that, like the video that just went viral of like this
Oh yeah, the two
Korean
Koreans eating soul food.
eating soul food, which is like the second time they've gone through this
Busted
stuff.
soul.
Yeah. But he's like sitting
He's
there
living his
rapping.
life.
Yeah, he's like, it's because it's all the same kind of similar food, and it was very presented in like, so like 10 years ago, my style of cooking, because again, I'm very American and I grew up in a Korean area. Korean American food is not anything new to me. I'm like, I was doing 10 years ago Korean barbecue, like where we marinate using Korean styles because I like the brown sugars, the soys, and whatnot better than like the other stuff. But then take it out back and throw it on a smoker for 15, like until it's done, and then serve it up in a Korean samjang style. So like where you just rip the meat up and then like have all the different things across the side so you can put it all together. So it was soul food, like or like tteokbokki mac and cheese. One of my favorite dishes. You just basically make like a mac and cheese sauce, simmer the tteokbokki in it, cover it with some panko and like crushed goldfish crackers.
You know what that makes me want to do? Dolsod mac and cheese with the big stone pots in the thing, so that the bottom end is all crusty and crunchy like in Dolsod bibimbap.
Or like cornbread pension was another one. Like like the Korean pancake,
yes,
but with a cornbread base.
Sure.
So like because cornbread and kimchi is phenomenal together because like cornbread and cabbage is together. But like that ham hocks and greens, like the braised greens that so like that's basically Korean as far as like anybody's concerned. Like you put that in front and they're like, yeah, I know what this is.
I recognize this.
I know what this is. Like this is pork bone soup. Like this is pork bone soup. I'm gonna do this right now. Like
yeah, exactly right. That's why it's like I think that this whole thing, this search for authenticity, is so misguided, because there's nothing authentic about food. Food is the most malleable and transient thing there is in the world.
That's
like when you think about like samosas came from friggin' Mongolia or via Turkey backward into India. And
all right, so this is where
Indian
I
food.
start getting real. This is where people deal with me and start getting real ignorant. And this is where the fun part is. And everybody thinks that I'm a nice chef until I am dealing with other people like me. And then I go into my full Diogenes and like the whole man on people. Like they're like, oh, I'm trained in French food. I'm like, oh, are you really? Like, so are we familiar with Niçoise? We follow with like familiar with all these different areas, or like are we like, what about the North? Or do you just know like the stuff that was pre-programmed for you that you're supposed to know and you don't actually know anything? Like it gets bad. I don't like. That's why I end up in a lot of fights, is because I know a little too much. So I argue with like everybody everybody. But yeah, for authenticity is really is annoying. Because like some things are authentic, some things are not. Also, like that's where I get into the debate of like, I'm like, okay, so like how long does it take for something to be authentic? Just as like behold a man. Like what does it take to be authentic? And people are like, oh, 2 generations, just sitting around like, come on, Plato, tell me what does it mean to be authentic food? And they're like, okay, so 2 generations, at least the grandparents eating it. I'm like, okay, cool. So hot dogs are traditional Korean food.
Spam is traditional Japanese food.
Yeah, exactly. And they're like, I beg your pardon. I'm like, well, we can talk about the authentic family dish, budae, that goes back generations. That is like 3 generations. Like we have the children, like 4 generations, because now we got like children of children. So we have like the people that were in the Korean War. How long ago was that? A while. God, 80 years? Is that 60? I don't know. I have to look it up. I don't know this. I know generalist history. Either way, so people's grandparents were in like when America was messing around in like the world like they usually do.
When the Korean War in the
Yeah,
60s?
60s. So 60s. How long ago was that? I thought the 90s were like 10 years ago the other
60
day.
years ago.
60 years ago. Okay, so 60 years. So people that were in it would be 80. About there. If you were 30 in the Korean War, your kids, above. So 60 years have crossed. So that's like how many generations are we into now? And like you have dishes like Buddha jjigae, or like in Hawaii, spam matsubi, or like these spam dishes, and like by the accounts of other people's to throw it back in their face. And like hot dogs are traditional food, and like anybody from Korea is just like, yeah, you can take Buddha jjigae from my cold dead hands, Yankee.
Well, it's the same. There's this like conflict in Native American cuisine right now because there's a lot of people who are trying to revive traditional Native American cuisine, and then like other natives will come there and be like, "Hey, where's the fry bread?" And these guys will be like, "We don't serve that colonialist garbage here," and they're like, "Yeah, but that's what my grandma used to feed me. That's my cuisine, right?" And it's like, yes, it was born out of like colonialism. It was born out of like desperation and needing to eat things. But at some point, that is also comfort food.
It now becomes like a part of your heritage, and
Yeah.
that's the history of the world. And like
It's like the fact that people don't realize India didn't have tea until the British gave it to us. And now, if you told my grandma that tea stole it from China and planted it in India,
they're like,
right?
what? This grows really well in this Assam area,
and we don't have to give them drugs for it. We can just own it ourselves.
Exactly. Oh my
Right.
God! So that
But
was
if
the
you
best
told
part.
my grandma that tea is not authentic and that she doesn't get to drink it now, she will cut your head off and drink tea out of it. Right? Like, yeah, good luck with that. Good luck with that.
Yeah. So it's like it's one of the problems like I run into is like too many people trying to define what things are ends up falling into the hands of just basically fascist beliefs or like even colonial beliefs. And I'm like, and like, or even like the way that like oh God, that was the one day that I got absolutely like I went to war on Twitter. Talk about not giving a hell. I was right. I'm autistic. I don't give a is when I was telling it like Italians that like or Italian Americans that like that's not you're not Italian. You're some of these foods are not Italian. They never have been. However, on the other side, what people keep missing is that like you're Italian American. That's his own thing. You have your own history, your own stories and whatnot. And like as a colonial myself, like people are like you're British, and I'm like I absolutely am not. In no way, shape, and or form am I a British man. Well, your parents were. I'm like, I'm sorry. Do we believe in the blood quantum here? Like I don't know, you're 1/5 British. I'm like, I was born on Canadian soil. I will die on Canadian soil. I am Canadian. End sentence. Yeah. I love the look on your face. I'm like, oh, that's like, oh, you're like. So when people tell me it's like, oh, you're a colonizer, I'm like, okay, sure, I'll buy that. But like, unless you're Native American, you better not be. You better not be talking to me about that. But like, I like, I'm Canadian, and this is the history of the people that I like, and that these are my people. This is where I'm from.
Oh, I get this all the time when I'm like, dude, I'm an American. I was born here. This is my culture. This is my food. This is, my linguistics trend is American. My idiom is English in America, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, but you're an immigrant. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't fit in India, man. I can fit in Boise, Idaho easier than I can fit in Calcutta, right? Like,
yeah. like, and that's just like, and then I had this conversation with somebody because you start feeding into this and you start doing the work of fascism for them because then you start identifying. It's like, oh, I'm Italian. I'm like you're not American. That's how you start defining what is not American. It's like, okay, you're. Oh, it's like I'm this one. It's like fine, you're not American. That's how like the fascists define what is.
Well, that's
and
one
is
of the
not.
things that just irks me so deep. And I'm good. This is like the most tangential tangent that you possibly get. But this is one of the things that just deeply, deeply irks me about Hindu nationalism and how they go in bed with the right wing from various other countries, which is that these guys are sitting there like India is a country for Hindus and no Muslims are allowed or no foreigners are allowed, no Christians, whatever. I'm like, okay, great. Well and good, fine, whatever but when you do that and you get in bed with the white nationalists and stuff, what you're doing is then making it for people like me who live here, who are not going back to India anytime soon. We get displaced in our own countries because suddenly these guys are like, oh, you belong back in India because India is a homeland for all Hindus and Indians, and you're a Hindu. And I'm like,
No, I'm not.
and it's just like now my own people are you or my ancestral people are now using like are now using against me or like weaponizing my own culture against me. And it's like this is not going to end well. I don't
Yeah,
care
that's why
what
I
you
think
think it's
people
going to
should
do
be
back
like,
home.
like, especially when you're Canadian, they're like, I am this. Like, if you're from there, like I again, being from Toronto, so I'm exposed to this, where a lot of people are like, oh, I'm Chinese Canadian, I am
Sure.
African Canadian, and it's like, and that tells the stories. People like, well, if you're going like, because they're usually directly from there, but like when I'm talking to people like to me, and they're like, I'm 3/4 Irish, and I'm like, sure,
Mm, sure.
sure.
Congratulations, I guess. Like, here's the thing, right? The thing that gets me about this is like,
What does that even mean?
yeah, like
Like,
my
that's the next.
cousin.
What the hell does that mean? Like that's always the next question on my mind. It was like, I'm 3/4 English.
So,
What do you mean by that?
like, what does that
What does
get
that
you?
what does that mean? Like, I really want to know. I really want to know. It was like, because like, does that make you like superior somehow? Or are we talking
3/4
eugenic? Like,
superior?
yeah, like that's where like the attack mode, the dog starts coming out. I think you can see me coming in the like. So what does that mean? What do you mean by that? Please tell me.
But it's like, for instance, my cousin,
How
and
to
this is where
radicalize people with gardening?
yeah, this is where like it gets really weird. Is like especially with double displacement. My cousin, when my parents' generation emigrated out from India, my cousin's dad, my uncle and aunt moved to Kenya, and a bunch of my family moved to Kenya because there are a lot of Gujaratis, there are a lot of Indians there, whatever, and they lived and built their life there. And my cousins were born in Kenya, and they grew up speaking, Gujarati and Swahili and English or whatever.
Yeah.
But like English was like the third language or something. And then later in their like teens and 20s, they moved to America. Now idiomatically, they're African. They're Indo-Africans. They were raised in Africa. They speak African dialects. They eat African inflected Indian food. All this thing. They move to America. And if a Desi dude comes up to you and says, "Yo, I'm an African American," you'd be like, "The hell you are,"
My buddy
because African
Dennis.
American is a term that has a meaning. But they're like, I'm. They can't say they're Indian American because the fact that Indian American is also like a
Yeah,
defined idea.
yeah. My buddy Dennis. This is let's talk about the weird, like the fun ways the world works. My buddy Dennis, his family escaped North Korea into Russia, and then their family moved here. So my man looks completely Korean, but thinks, talks, and is Russian. Like his phone, like he looks like he's from Korea, but it's like completely a generation removed, because
Yeah.
his grandparents moved like the entire, like, so he never is like, I don't know, and I've never stepped foot in Korea. And if anybody tries to, because then he grew up in that entire way, in that what happens with this is Russians telling him, you're not Russian. So he doubled down by becoming the most Russian mother ever. We are talking full Adidas, vodka, does not speak he like Russian flags everywhere. His voicemail when he moved, like he was like 15, 20 years in Canada, and his voicemail is in Russian. And it's one of the things, because like people are about to say, like, this is what doing people's work for them, and like, because of the color of his skin, like, it didn't matter that like 2 generations, 3 generations of like, like, so he was, I think he was literally half Russian. Like, I think like it was his parent, like it was his, yeah, either way, multiple generations of these people coming down, and then they're like, oh, you're not Russian because you look this way. And it's like, what?
Been here for generations,
Being
bro.
here
What
for
do you want from me?
generations, where it's like, yeah, or it's like where are you from becomes like, what's your family's background? Back here, it's like, oh, what's your background? We never really ask where someone's from when they're like,
Yeah, because it's a useless
because
term.
like it's kind of useless, because like I'm from down the street, like, but like, what's your background? And this is a much more welcoming conversation. But then again, here it doesn't have the same loaded pretext that I like it has in America, where they're like, where are you from? Because it always feels like an inquisition.
Yeah.
Like outside of Toronto, maybe it might feel that way, but like I can only speak for where I live. And I will only ever try to speak from where I am. But here it's like a lot of people like talk about it, like, oh, my family is this, or people talk about the weird mashups that they have. Like, my family is like, my dad's French, but my mom's Jamaican. So like,
That's rad.
yeah. So it ends up with some really weird cooking styles. Because like, yeah, because like, yeah, no, I'm Toronto. Like, one of the things that people talk about at Toronto cooking is it's very weird. It's very it's sometimes
because like
unapproachable.
everybody came there. There's like Caribbean
Everybody, we have
food.
everybody. We have everybody. I walk through little Portugal, through little Ethiopia, through little Eritrea, into little Korea on my way to Chinatown, where I go through a whole bunch of other. We can go through Greek Town and through the Danforth and whatnot. Like some liberals don't like like these community based things, but we love that here. We love X town, Y town, this town because
I
everybody.
think it's awesome. I think having ethnic enclaves is great because it gives exposure. It gives people a way to find these things
that they know. People are like, "Oh, they're segregated." I'm like, "Oh, they're not." Like, just stop talking about us like we're American. Like you can go down the street. Whoop, you can go down the street and or where I'm from in Malton or Rexdale and all that. Like, we didn't have pizza day in high school. We had samosa day. Like, the predominant part of our school was North Indian. So people are like, "Oh, pizza day." Like, no, I'm gonna get 3 samosa and I'm gonna call that a lunch. Thank you very much.
My school was predominantly Vietnamese, so like our we didn't have samosa days. We definitely had like banh mi specials, right? Like,
oh yeah, however,
banh mi's and burritos. That's what the game was.
Yeah, it's like you tell it to this guy. Like, I'm like I grew up eating this stuff. Like, I like my comfort food is Indian, like North Indian, like general, just generic. Like, just please, just give it to me. Like, that's my chicken soup. My chicken soup is not chicken soup. It is like
chicken korma.
Chicken korma. Yes, yeah. My chicken soup is chicken korma. Like that's what I want to eat when I
I don't. Portuguese gave to us.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I think. It's funny thing. Oh, my Italian food is so authentic. This has been in my family for like hundreds of years. I'm like, that's cool. Where did it come from before that?
My poor listeners. Okay, anyways, we're going to call it a day because otherwise we're never going to stop. Magic cards, they're great.
Yeah. Oh my God, we just hit the 1 hour mark, and we didn't even talk about how this all correlates to back to Magic. Because I can correlate almost everything that we've had back to a Magic card, including up to my favorite being Culling Ritual, where we talk about pruning.
I call this Cultivate the episode.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's like, look, man, the thing is, ultimately, the reason I wanted to have you on to talk about this, to be able to bring this to a close, is because Magic is important. We love Magic. Everybody who listens to this loves Magic. But the biggest thing is it's important to be able to have other hobbies, to be able to go outside, to be able to find some place outside of the online discourse or whatever, to go out and chill, relax, find yourself some nature, find yourself something to touch, go touch grass and grow the grass.
It's like, grow it, touch it.
And then eat it.
Yeah, eat it.
And it's like, dude. Okay, well, not like that, though, because that poor nasturtium did nothing to deserve that.
Yeah, I did. It was delicious. This is cucumber, mint water, and basil water that I pulled out of
I really like that cup thing, by the way, the coconut leaf and the coconut bowl thing.
Yeah.
It's wild. I love those things. You definitely look like an old hermit living out in the woods. I think moving your laptop out here for the conversation is the best idea. I love it. But yeah, okay, man. If people want to find you, where can they go?
The Hermit Druid on Twitter, or the way things are, you can find me on TikTok, where I yeah, you can find me on TikTok, and especially there I give you ask me questions, you talk to me, I will, if it's a good question, you get replies, and I can go through my entire garden and show you, because it's very grab and go. I can, on that app, I can directly answer questions, directly. I can reply with video to question, and directly answer your question. And I don't care, because you ask me a good question. I am an autistic man with ADHD. You ask me a good question, good luck shutting me up.
Yeah.
We haven't even talked about my other hobby. Magic is my hobby. We talked about gardening. We haven't talked about the fact that I fence.
Yeah, but that's another episode.
Yeah,
I'm not going to let you go down that track right now. Anyways, you can find me at you can find me at Gears on Twitter. You can find this podcast anywhere podcasts are sold, or at Cool Stuff Inc. on Tuesdays, or at YouTube on Tuesdays, thanks to my editor EK. You can also find me, honestly, in my garden, because I've got a lot of things I have to harvest, and I need to figure out what to do with these 40 pounds of green beans that I've now plucked.
Hot Hobbit summer.
Also, I am on Mastodon. I am on Blue Sky. I'm not going to be probably anywhere else, because I'm already at my limit with that.
Yeah, I haven't even joined
Google
one yet.
Shivam, you'll find it. Anyways, you can also hear me on Shivam and Wheeler Love Magic, or on my other podcast, the Dragonlance, the Chronicles of Dragonlance. It's not magic without the gathering, and we will see you next time.